Something falls outside of its peripheral vision. It comes after you, one side, the other, one side, the other, one side, the other, until it grabs you and eats you. The old sailors say when you see the double-headed snake monster, siskyoto, fear, and you move, which happens reflexively, they say don't run. Having moved, it sees you, but now you're standing still. So it comes after you, one side, the other, one side, the other, one side, the other, until it has you trapped between both of its heads. And then suddenly, seeing itself reflected in its own eyes, gets so horrified by its own image that it slinks away in horror. This is how it is with fear. None of us will ever run fast enough from what frightens us. The task in our lives is stand still and look at it. It's you who have it, not it that has you. If it's got you, then you are paralyzed by it. Then you have to wait for somebody else to kill the dragon. You have to wait for St. George to slay the monster. But then your destiny is in something else's hands, somebody else's hands. This is not the heroic journey. The journey of heroes is a willingness to take risk and to get beyond the ordinary and to face your fear. There's a young man who is climbing in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. At the age of 18, he goes up, he is caught in an unseasonable blizzard, sustains a whiteout. In his disoriented condition, he steps across a stream that's been covered with a veneer of ice, goes through the ice, gets both of his feet wet. With his remaining strength, he builds a rudimentary lean-to, and he's discovered 48 hours later, by this time, he has sustained a bilateral below-the-knee amputation. He has frostbite, and they cut off his legs below the knee to save his life. This picture is taken 2 years later when he climbs the same mountain that he had lost his legs on previously. In the article that accompanied this photograph, he was interviewed, and the interviewer asked him, what's it like now to climb without your feet and legs as it was beforehand when you had them? And he said, what's it like now? Now I don't get cramps in my calves. It doesn't matter what happens to you. It matters how you come to what happens to you. If this kid says to himself, if only I hadn't made the trip, if only I had more assiduously pursued the weather forecast, called the flight service station, watch the 24-hour weather channel, if only, then I wouldn't have made the trip. If that's what he says to himself, it's not going to be possible for him to deal with what he's got. If you want to be someplace other than where you are, it makes wherever you are never enough. This is not the journey of heroes, at least in this life. You got to play the hand you're dealt. Success in this life has nothing to do with being dealt great cards. It's got something to do with learning how to play a poor hand well. There are bumps on the road. All of us sometimes get dealt a hand we don't want. There is no mixed deal. Play the hand and come to it with a certain evanescent sense of joy. My great mentor, Mahatma Gandhi, I remember since we have spoken to an Indian representative here this morning, one of my great teachers, who sadly I never met personally, had what I think is the single greatest line for health I ever heard. He said, you're going to be somewhere, be there. If you're going to be somewhere, be there. If you always want to be someplace other than where you are, it makes wherever you are never enough. I want to show you a picture of my mother. I want to tell you this story because my mother was going to have heart surgery about 8 weeks ago, so it's a unique opportunity for me to share this tale with you. This woman is 88 years old, is a Holocaust survivor. She has survived 2 husbands, but she has grade 4 mitral valve regurgitation. And she's in heart failure. She went to see her doctor, who said he could repair the valve and that there was a 90% chance of operative success. Now you understand that you could be an operative success and for this surgery not to be successful. So she went to see the cardiac surgeon, who said, you know, there's about a 90% chance that there'd be an operative success, but I want you to know that there are people who are successfully operated upon who have some memory loss. Research, by the way, now tells us about 20% of the people will sustain a significant memory loss, not just in the short term from the acute trauma, but over the long haul. 20% of the individuals at least have a deficit over 5 years. And he said you could be left with less than you have now. He says, do you have a good life now? She says, you know, I play bridge a couple times a day, and I'm still cooking. I get occasionally short of breath. He says, there's some medication that could help. And asked the doctor, what would you do if I was your mother? And he said, without a hesitation, I wouldn't do it. I'd tell her not to do it. I'd made an arrangement to go to see my mother, to be with her during the catheterization and for the operation. I'd taken time off of the schedule. We had planned it beforehand. And when he gave her the reprieve, She jumped at it and said, I'm not going to have it. Whatever time I have left, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it with what it is I got. So I called her and I said, well, maybe I won't come out. Maybe I won't come out. So I knew this was an invitation to negative projection. That's because there are nurses and social workers. My wife said the same thing, who happens to be a surgical nurse of 41 years together. I said, listen, you're not going to have the surgery. Maybe I won't come out. She says, why don't you come anyway? You set aside the time. She says, come, we'll party. She says, the time we should get together is not only to celebrate kind of events of potential disaster. Come. So I went. You always have something to learn from your mother. So I get there, and I was going to be there for the weekend. The surgery was going to be on Monday. It's a Friday night, the coming of the Sabbath, and it was a very special ceremonial time. My mother lights these candles, covers her eyes. As a kid, I thought she covered her eyes because she didn't want me to see her crying. And I asked her, why do you cover your eyes? Is it because you're crying? She said, no, I cover my eyes because I do not want to be blinded by the light of the coming of the Messiah. Her anticipation every Friday, the Messiah is going to come. This old lady still doing it, and that Friday night she lights the candles and then has me bend over. You can understand why. To bless me, my mother, my 88-year-old mother, blessing me. And then we play bridge until I had to plead for mercy. I said, listen, I can't stay up anymore. These old people were having no difficulty at all. The following morning, she says, I want you to sit down because I have some things I want to tell you. What does she want to tell me? She wants to tell me where her bank account is. She wants to tell me that she always has $5,000 in cash to cover her funeral expenses. She wants to tell me what she wants to distribute to her grandchildren. And finally, she wants me to get in touch with the German government to stop her reparation payment. She doesn't want to get anything that's not due to her. It's a very European worldview. She didn't want anything that was not coming to her and felt not great about taking the money anyway. By this time, I said, enough already, enough. I don't need to hear anymore. And she said, listen, this is my party. I'll tell you when it's over.